Welcome to Golf Weekly. I'm your host, Daniel Cort. With me, as always, my good buddy Chris Tremblay with the JPGA.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice to be back.
Good to have you, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and apologize right off base for having this scruffy look about me, but it's also a great opportunity for me to do some shameless cross-promotion.
I agree.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this opportunity. Has nothing to do with golf, but for those people who like amateur theater, we open Evita this Friday night, May 11th. So come on out to the May River Theater and see Evita. We're moving on. That's enough said. Just to explain the beard here. Week in review, Chris.
Time to go ahead and go over the two events from this past weekend in the men's golf. Let's start out with the Champions Tour, where
the Insperity,
where my former college coach at the University of Maryland, Fred Funk, birdied 4 of the last 5 holes to go ahead and defeat Tom Lehman by 1, and he had a laser there on 18. And the ironic thing was that Fred won at the Woodlands Golf Course in Houston, Texas this past week, 20 years after he won his first event there, the Shell Houston Open. So it was a really great week for Fred to go ahead and have good things happen.
Pretty nostalgic, huh?
Very much so. And speaking of nostalgic, with that tournament this weekend, for those of you that watched it on the Golf Channel, you were able to see, if you watched it, I believe, on Sunday, when they had on the Big Three, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player playing together in a scramble against a couple of other teams. And boy, the fans were out, and it was exciting stuff.
You know, and I saw, I guess, Palmer hit like a 30-footer on the last hole, and those guys were really genuinely excited.
Oh, you could hear the tone in their voices when they were going ahead and playing, that they were, they enjoyed being out there, but whenever they're competing, and Jack let it be known that he enjoyed it, but he was out there to win, and Arnold got up there on the last hole and knocked in a good 25-footer for birdie, and it was the perfect ending to a perfect day in golf.
Well, and you look at what those guys still do in their individual businesses, and it's clear that they're still all very competitive.
Very much so.
You can't change that about them. It's in their nature, so when they step on a golf course, boom, there it is.
Why they're still able to go out there and compete at the age they're at and still have as much fun as they had.
I just hope some of these stars of today, when they are in the twilight of their career, have the grace and the appreciation for the game that these guys have shown. I don't know that we'll ever see that again, so it's really wonderful to kind of take that in now.
Well, it was very unique, but it was nice to see, because I should take that back. It was on Saturday that they did that.
That's
and
right.
You were able to see some of the players that finished early.
Right.
Tom Lehman, Mike Goodis, a couple of the others that were leaders in the tournament, were out there following them around.
Yeah.
I mean, and Andy Bean, they were just as giddy as you and I would have been if we were kids following the tour around.
It's the ultimate sign of respect, I guess, in the game.
I think that's well put.
Yeah.
Well put.
Moving on real quick, Wells Fargo Championship. That's become the Quail Hollow in Charlotte. That's become really like almost, let's call it the 6th major. It's definitely in line to host, I think, a U.S. Open up the road here real soon. And the players love the course. The course sets up like an Open championship, and it always draws a tremendous field. And it's got some real stars. They're starting to take that trophy with Ricky Fowler.
Very demanding golf
PGA
course.
tournament.
Very demanding golf course. It was a terrific event this week. I think, a very popular champion with Ricky Fowler winning, as is evident by all the yellow, orange, and blue that was in the crowd.
Wow.
And, great playoff between Rory McIlroy, who I believe regained the #1 spot by going ahead and finishing tied for 2nd, and D.A. Points, who's really blossomed the last 2 years in his career. And, they played the 18th in the playoff, which was the hardest hole of the week.
Right.
Ricky hit a beautiful drive there. He hit a wedge in there to about 4 feet below the hole, and no problem. Right in the middle.
It looked relatively easy.
He made it look a little easier than I'm sure it was.
330-yard drive, little gap wedge in there to about 4 feet. Bang, good night, thank you.
Everybody's going home, and I'm sure that all the people that had worked the tournament very hard weren't, too sad to see it end on the first hole, certainly with Ricky as the champion. So very popular win.
Well, and I know, I think a lot of folks probably, especially the advertisers, were a little concerned with Tiger missing the cut, Phil not really being a factor. But these young guys have just proved that we don't need Tiger and Phil to play well to have excitement on the tour anymore.
Couldn't agree more. They've gone ahead and added a lot more, for lack of a better term, panache.
Yeah.
To what kind of could have been viewed as a dull rest of the fields if Tiger and Phil and a few others were in it. And between, you know, Bubba Watson winning the Masters and the Golf Boys, as they're called, Hunter Mahan having 2 victories this year, Ben Crane playing well, and now Ricky going ahead and getting a victory. It certainly capped a nice week.
That video doesn't look so stupid anymore, does it?
All of a sudden it goes ahead and has a lot more merit to it.
Well, and I think when you don't take yourself that seriously, you always play better golf. So
I think it probably is easier on the nerves. I agree.
No question.
I agree.
And finally, let's move into what I think is probably, they call it the 5th major, but is arguably the best field in golf that you're going to assemble at any one tournament in a year. Down here in Ponte Vedra, Jacksonville, sort of our backyard, the Players' Championship. Let's talk a little about that.
Easily the strongest field in golf. KJ Choi is the defender. He beat David Toms in a playoff last year. What can you say? You know, you've got the top players. Every top player pretty much is there. They did have one withdrawal. Freddie Couples had to drop out earlier. I think it was late yesterday. He had to drop out because he has some health issues. I kind of think it's a good tournament for Lee Westwood. That's going to be my pick this week, strictly because he went ahead and had a fine finish last week. He closed on Sunday at the Wells Fargo with a 66 to tie for 5th, and he's just been playing good golf, and if there's anybody that's just due, it's Lee Westwood to win one of these big ones.
And you had said, you know, I asked you, what particular part of your game do you think you need working for you going into this tournament, and you said all of it.
I think it all needs to come together. You know, there are par 5s the players can reach into. Like Augusta, if you're not coming into those greens from the right angle, you know, you're going to have a tough enough time making par, let alone giving yourself a birdie opportunity. So I think, you know, the guy who's obviously putting well, and that's, you know, pretty much mandatory any week you win, but really just kind of has everything going and doesn't make any big numbers, which the potential for big numbers on that golf course is certainly there.
Well, yeah, no matter how well you're playing, at some point, if the wind's blowing especially, you got to come there and face 17, which can, no matter how you're hitting it, can be a train wreck of
That's enough to wreck your week.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Well, Chris, good segment. You're going to come back and join me for segment 3. We're going to talk a little bit about pre-round preparation.
Exactly.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be with the Hilton Head BMW guys, one who used to be a PGA Tour player. Stay with us.